Hey guys, this is Fady from Harvey Production Studio. Welcome to another video. Today's video will be explaining what an ADAT means. A lot of devices in studios right now are using ADAT, and there's a lot of questions out there. Some people fully understand what it is, some people kind of confused, and I've worked recently with so many studios installing ADAT units for them, and then they were confused about the routing and how it works and what does ADAT do and how do you connect an ADAT unit. So in today's video would be explaining what ADAT is, what's the advantages of it, how to use it in your setup, and how can you expand your setup with ADATs. So stick around and let's dig in. So let's start by saying, what does ADAT stand for, which is Alesis Digital Audio Tape. That was introduced in the 90s. It's an 8-channel audio tape. And then now there's so many units in studios that are ADAT. I have several ADAT units in my studio in here. The idea is you got one cable that is a fiber optic ADAT cable that carries at a maximum of 8 channel of audio. And then the unit converts the analog audio to digital audio inside of it and then sends that via that one cable to your any interface or whatever unit that would accept this. So it's basically a conversion from analog to digital, and you can run it the other way around, conversion from digital to analog, and send it via an ADAT cable. Why is that important for us to understand, and what's the applications of this in the studios? Nowadays, there's a lot of microphone preamps, for example, that supports ADAT. So in my studio right now, and I have a separate video on this, I have the Heritage Audio Super 8. You guys have seen some of you might have seen the video on the YouTube channel, which is an 8-channel preamp. It's a 1073 by Heritage Audio. But the difference is it has an ADAT converters in it. I know Neve has a similar one. Now SSL has some. The 4710 by Universal Audio is the same one. And there's tons and tons and tons out there. What does that mean? It means I have 8-channel preamps. Old school way is I got a mic, goes in, and then I take a line out. And I take that line out, has to go into my interface onto a line input. Now with the ADAT compatibility, that means this unit receives all 8 channels of these 8 microphone pre's, converts them into a digital. So the conversion happens on that preamp unit, not on the interface. That's where the conversion happens. And it sends an ADAT signal via ADAT cable to the interface. And that's a digital signal. And the interface, obviously my interface has to accept ADAT. And then now I have 8 more channel of pre's on my interface. There's 2 advantages here to mention. Number one, let's say I have an interface. Let's say I have an Apollo 8. Let's say I have an Apollo X8P. So it has 8 microphone pre's and has 8 line inputs. And then if I use any external pre's and I use any of the line inputs on that unit, I can't use those pre's on the same insert. So insert 1 and 2, or input 1 and 2, if I plugged in an external, so then I can use only 6 pre's from my Apollo. If I would use my Heritage Audio and go just pure analog into that Apollo, then I cannot use any of the Apollo pre's. I'm only using the line inputs, not the pre's. So at the end of the day, I have only 8 channels. Whether they're the Apollo 8 channels inside the Apollo, the pre's, or the pre's inside my Heritage Audio. But now if I plug this unit via ADAT, I'm getting a total of 16 channels because I have still all the 8 channels of the Apollo. I also have all the 8 channels of the Super 8, and I basically add to my interface, which is a really cool thing that we use a lot in studios, where you'll see some studios have a little Apollo Twin or any interface. And then expanding, you want to expand, get more pre's. Instead of buying a different interface, just go find a set of pre's that you prefer. Let's say you want an SSL color or a 1073 color or a 4710 color. Then you just buy that unit and plug it ADAT to your interface, whatever interface that you have. And then here you go. You got yourself, you added channels to your unit and you convert it. Now, because we're now converting and connecting those 2 units digitally to one another, because you're converting on the preamp side and then connecting that digital to my interface side, anytime you have 2 units communicating via digital signal, you always have to clock, which means you have to choose one of these 2, become your master clock, the other one will become slave. And you can either clock that via ADAT if the unit supports ADAT clocking, or you can just do the old school word clock via BNC cable. But anytime you communicate between two units digitally, you got to make sure that your clock is set up right. Otherwise, it'll still read signal, and what's going to happen is as you're recording, you'll hear those random pops and clicks and glitches that will ruin your recordings, and then the units will not be usable anymore. Now, a lot of these units would have ADAT in and ADAT out, and which means is, for example, on the Heritage audio, or actually, let's pick an interface. Actually, it's a little bit better example. Let's pick the Apollo X8P. Has ADAT in and ADAT out. ADAT in means it's receiving 8 digital audio coming from my Heritage audio. And ADAT out, it means I'm sending from my DAW digital audio via ADAT that goes to a unit that takes that ADAT out and converts it to analog signal and send it somewhere else. Or you're sending still digital, no conversion. So in a practical example in my studio, I have the PowerPlay P16, the Behringer, and those take ADAT. So I actually have 2 ADAT cables coming from my interface into those, and I feed it 16 channel of ADAT audio, and that's what I send people in the live room for their ear mix. While the ADAT in is coming from my Heritage audio and is coming from my 4710, which gives me 12 extra channels of microphone preamps. Mindful to say, I have multiple ADAT units or interfaces, not just one. Some interfaces will take more, and you can see that on the back of each unit. Some will have only one ADAT input, some would have multiple ADAT inputs. Let's also explain that, and specifically to the UA, because I've been asked that question so many times. The UA on the back of them, they have 2 ADAT inputs and 2 ADAT outputs, but that does not mean you can connect 2 separate units at the same time. What these are for, when you're running 48 sample rate, you can have 8 channels via one cable. The second cable becomes literally a mirrored image of it. So it's not connecting 2 different units and you have a total of 16 channels. It's the same 8 channels, and you're mirroring that. But if you go any past 48 kilohertz in sample rate, then you would use both cables to get to your 8 channels. Because if you run, for example, at 192, only 4 channels can pass per cable. So you would have to use both cables to record at 192 via ADAT, 192 kilohertz. So that's what that does. And then the output is the same thing. It outputs 8 channels at 48 hertz. Then the second output will be mirrored. And then if you use at 192, then output 1 would be channel 1 to 4, and output 2 would be channel 5 to 6. Now, this is different according to what interface are you using. So, like was my Galaxy interface, it has only one ADAT, but it supports 8 channels, and there's no mirroring of it. There's other units would have multiple ADATs. So my RME unit over here actually has 8 ADATs in it, which runs at 64 channels of audio at 48. And then when I go to 96, the numbers drop a little bit. So that's basically, in a simple way, explanation of what the ADAT is. It's a very important thing to understand. It is also a very helpful tool for your studio, because a lot of times if you want to add more pre's to your studio setup, this might be one of the easiest way to add more pre's and channels without having to replace your entire interface, as long as your unit supports ADAT in it. I hope that video is helpful. If you have any questions about ADAT or about your studio setup, make sure you put it in the comments or email me directly. My email isn't in the description below, and I will do my best to try to help you with your setup. If you like this video, make sure you share it and subscribe to the channel, and see you guys at the next one.